Education in the 1930s.
A TV news broadcast by
Maggie
and Kate.
Hello, my name is Maggie Belanger, here with NTE TV. Today we'll be focusing on education in the 1930s. In general, the 1930s was a very difficult time for schools. Because of the Great Depression, parents were unable to supply things like school stationery, clothes, and tuition, all vital things needed to attend a school. A well-paid teacher would receive merely $200 for a 5-month school year. Now we're going over to Margaret, who will tell us more about school in rural areas back then. Over to you, Margaret. Thank you, Maggie. Earlier today, I visited a 1930s school teacher to find out just what was going on at schools back then. Who better to ask than a teacher, of course? Now, here we are with Miss Spider. How are you, Miss Spider?
Good, honey, thank you.
Okay, so, I wanted to talk to you about your days as a school teacher. Now, I understand you worked in a one-room schoolhouse. How was that experience?
Well, every day I walk 20 miles just to get to school. You know, these kids are the rat brats. But I don't know why I did it back then, looking back on them. But anyway, I'd walk to school and I'd have firewood there. And sometimes I'd have to cut the firewood and put it in the wood stove we had for the winter. I had all the kids, I had them line up by grade. See, they was learning to read. I managed to get some Rat, Dick, and Jane books. Those were great. Yeah.
Now, tell me, did you ever, did they all learn the same thing at different ages? What was the average school day like? How long was it? Things like that, you know?
Well, honey, see what I used to do? I'd call them up one by one and they'd read aloud what they've been working on. And, yeah. And the dumb kids, they sat in front because I gave them the books that were like, what is A, B, C? Then the smarty kids, I gave them poetry, you know? If I could get my hands on it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Now, how about because of the Great Depression? You know, everything was so difficult, and I can understand it was just such a difficult time. And you know, how did that affect your school and things like that? You know.
Well, I had many kids drop out. Mostly some young men. Good riddance, if you ask me. They're a bunch of rats. But you know, they had to go off and work at their daddy's farm, and then the young girls, they just some of them could not pay for it. I was not getting paid much. I was getting $5 if I was lucky.
You know, that was just tragic. I mean,
yeah, it is, honey. You have it so lucky.
I mean, you must have been such a hard worker, and it must have been just so difficult. Now, I have another question. You know, I know it must have been so dreadful being there. Now, how about, I know it was a very small room. It must have gotten dirty so quickly. Now, how did you deal with that?
Yes, they all learned the same thing. Well, in my school, I had to do all the cleaning. Stay there every day, wipe up the dust and the dirt that all those pigs brought into that school. I hate children. Why was that teacher? Anyway, so then, but you know, in those privileged schools, they had the kids do it. If I had it my way, I'd just have them live there all day and the education would be their paying. But no, they asked for 20 cents an hour. Who has that money? You do now. But back then, we weren't so lucky.
Oh, I'm sorry, but that is all the time I have with you today. Thank you very much for your time. It was very helpful. And now we are going back to Maggie, who's going to tell us what we have next. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Spider. Thank you very much.
Bye, dearie.
Thank you, Margaret. That was very interesting. Now we're going over to Steve, who will tell us more about school in urban areas back then.
Education. We're going to tell you all about it for information. Kids in cities and towns didn't have to work as hard to get on school grounds. They had more money to go to school, but the whole time they were there, it wasn't so cool. They had to say goodbye to music and art. From lack of money, no, that wasn't so spunky. Yo, I'm Steve and I'm
Thank you, Steve. Now we're going over to Mandy, who will tell us more about what it was like to be an African American or a woman trying to get an education. Thank you for that, Maggie. I'm Mandy, and this is Melissa, and we are here talking about her
Am I gonna be out of here soon? I have a hairdresser appointment.
Excuse her attitude. We're going to be talking about her grandparents, who unfortunately passed. Yes, but they both went to school in the 1930s. Obviously, her grandmother having to deal with education as a woman, and her grandfather having to deal with education as an African American. So, I want you to tell me, how did segregation affect education?
Education was racially segregated. 25% of schools were African American, but they were really not well funded. African Americans were the poorest students, and they were not respected. Racial segregation, it was like a trend. Like the Bob movement again. Can I go leave now?
No. And just for your information, Bobs aren't a trend. Tell me, Melissa, what kind of problems did your grandmother face as a woman in the education system?
Women's education depended on where they lived, their social class, their income, who their parents were and husbands, and stuff that matters, really. Women had really just started to go look for higher education.
Mm-hmm.
Especially women who were Jewish and African American and Catholic immigrants.
Yep.
Can I leave?
Sorry, I still actually kind of want to know one more thing. Like, how do you think she was viewed?
It was frowned upon for women to go to school because really women's rights had just been put into action and they hadn't been really taken seriously then. Happy?
Back to you, Maggie. Wow, that was so interesting. I never would have guessed how difficult it was to get an education back then. I mean, I knew that it was always a difficult time. I just never really considered the magnitude of the issue. Thank you for watching. Remember, this is NTETV, and I'm Maggie Belanger. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. For more information on the subject, look for these websites and books.
This has been a production by Kate
and Maggie.
I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Bye!